We're a custom broker logistics company based out of here in McAllen, Texas.
And which cities are you in?
Well, we're based out of McAllen, but we have warehouse operations in Far Texas, in Brownsville, and we clear customs in all ports of the United States.
Well, today we're here to learn the very latest on USMCA because the renewal is next year. So let's start by asking, what's the very latest you've heard?
Well, like you mentioned, the revision, or a lot of people are calling it renegotiation of USMCA, is going to happen July 1st, 2026, which is the sunset clause of the 6 years. To evaluate it, they're going to continue another 16 years with the agreement. So that's what's going to happen next year. Obviously, they're starting the hearings and the discussions on what's going to be put on the table. It already started this year. Actually, last week, as a matter of fact, there were some hearings from December 3rd to the 5th in Washington by different industry groups in the U.S., and Mexico has done the same thing, as well as Canada. So we'll probably have a few more in the next months before the actual meeting for the revision happens in the middle of next year.
What have you read about those first hearings up in DC?
Basically, there's not much information other than there were several industry sectors, agricultural, steel, and some labor issues. So what they're doing is basically they're gathering information, statistics, and opinions from scholars and consultants of what needs to be put on the table for the revision. So there were some concerns about the tariffs and the rules of origin and the impact on the agricultural sector, things of that nature. So that's what they're putting in place right now.
Mm-hmm. And I've read some articles where it's just speculation or probability, but that the whole agreement could be replaced, individual agreements with the U.S. and Mexico and the U.S. and Canada.
Yes, as you know, and a lot of people know, the agreement was signed during the first term of President Trump. He was the one that pushed for it with the huge trade representative. So it was put in place in his first term, but he now sees that agreement is not beneficial to the U.S. So yeah, there's word out there that it might be dissolved, or the U.S. will pull out of it, and that pretty much will dissolve the agreement. So, and then the word also is that if that happens, then they're going to have bilateral agreements, U.S. Mexico and U.S. Canada, which will bring a whole new set of rules for each country. So,
a good thing for the lawyers, perhaps. More work?
Yeah, it will be more work for consultants, for brokers. So because we're going to have to start from scratch in a lot of things, especially the rules of origin. They might have different rules. That's one thing that they're going to focus a lot. It seems that under this revision, they're going to push more on the rules of origin based on regional value content rather than tariff shift. So we're going to see some changes in the rules of origin. And obviously, if they go on bilateral agreements, that's going to be the push as well.
So should we take that prospect seriously, that it could be fully dissolved?
We need to be cautious. Obviously, the consensus from the industry and even from the government is that USMCA will continue. But as we know, President Trump is using it as a political tool to put pressure on Mexico and Canada to cave in on certain things that he wants to be put in place. For example, last April, the U.S. Trade Representative put together a report on non-tariff barriers for different countries, including Mexico. And there are 50-some non-tariff barriers. They include the bureaucracy, the judicial system, the labor, things of that nature. So that's going to be a big part of the revision, making sure that Mexico understands that those non-tariff items are negotiated so that they can continue with the agreement. Besides the drug trafficking and border security and immigration issues, even the water, all that that's going to be put in place. But there are very specific items that they're going to be discussed now.
Does the administration in Washington not see the value of the increased business and the strengthening of the supply chains in those three North American countries vis-a-vis what it used to be with China, with the sanctions against China and the political confrontation with China? A lot of businesses come to North America, and on the face of it, you think everyone's benefited from North America, this continent, having more business and everything happening within those three countries. Is that not seen up in DC?
I think so. I think they realize that the United States needs Mexico and Canada from a regional standpoint. We had a very hard lesson during the pandemic with COVID. We were so dependent on Asia, in particular China, and when COVID hit, the supply chain got disrupted in a major way. So that's when things started. That was with the Biden administration. They started realizing that we needed to do what I call globalization 2.0, which means regionalization, but still with global inputs. So the region, we need to be more resourceful in the region so that we can react to disruptions like a pandemic and things, or catastrophic weather, wars, geopolitical issues. So I think they understand that we need to become a closer region from a supply chain and trade standpoint. However, like I mentioned, they're using this the USMCA revision renegotiation as a political tool. So it's trade, economics, and politics. So we have to evaluate all angles.
It's all mixed together.
Yes. And we've seen there's a big push, as you know, from the Trump administration to bring industry to the United States, to bring jobs, which nobody's against that. But for example, the OEMs, the car manufacturers, I think we're going to see more investment in GM and Stellantis and Honda. They're investing in new capacity in the U.S. for car assemblies. But the parts, the auto parts, I think they're still going to be needed to be supplied from Mexico and Canada. And then there are initiatives like from GM, for example, they're asking their suppliers not to source parts from China. So we're going to see a shift of parts production to North America because of the tariffs and IEPAs and Section 301 and Section 232 tariffs. We're going to see if that push becomes more aggressive from the other OEMs. We're going to see more auto parts being produced in North America. So that makes us think from a logical perspective that USMCA will continue, that the U.S. needs Mexico and Canada.
But there's also criticism that, in fact, Chinese parts are still getting through Mexico, and that perhaps it's been hidden in some way. But the percentage of raw materials in any manufacturing project, possibly most automobiles, there's parts in there that Mexico's not really acknowledging is from China.
Yes, there is the big concern, and it is happening. There's no denial about it, that there's what we call transshipment, meaning Chinese products going through Mexican ports, and in a lot of cases, they're just being relabeled, repackaged, and sent back to the U.S. as Mexico origin and claiming USMCA preferential treatment. That is happening. There's no doubt. Also, there is the other portion, which is the majority, I think, of materials from China being assembled or processed in Mexico to make products. So that's one of the things. That's why they meet the rules of origin legitimately from a USMCA standpoint. So that's why I was mentioning that they're going to rely more on regional value content rather than tariff shift provisions, because yeah, you can bring nuts and bolts from China, and they make a shift, so that's okay, and the part will still qualify for USMCA preferential treatment. But now they want to make sure that they rely on the regional value content, meaning that they want more content of U.S., Mexico, Canada components and labor and overhead to meet USMCA. So that's going to be come into play in the revision. Also, going back to the transshipment, Customs, U.S. Customs is really putting a lot of effort, a lot of reviews, inspections to ensure that there's no transshipment. I've seen a lot of post-entry reviews by Customs. The entry is the import transaction in the U.S., so they're reviewing, they're requesting information from importers to validate that there's no transshipment. I have many customers that are receiving those letters, and that has exponentially grown. So they're making sure that there's no transshipment, and then they're going to tighten up the rules of origin to make sure that they're more reliable from a regional value content. And just today, in the news, Mexico will be imposing. It already passed Congress. I think it's going to the Senate. Mexico is going to be imposing tariffs, higher tariffs on products, on almost 1,400 tariff items of products that are not from countries that have they don't have free trade agreements with Mexico. So Mexico is increasing tariffs too. So that's seen. I think they're doing this to be complacent to the U.S. government.
Compliant.
Yeah, compliant. So they're going to make it difficult to import components and materials into Mexico from countries that Mexico doesn't have a free trade agreement with. So that's going to create this regionalization, and I think that's going to, be a positive for Mexico when they sit down next year for the USMCA revision.
What about intellectual property? Is that under discussion more these days?
Yes, it's part of the non-tariff barriers. Obviously, that's one of the things that they want to make sure. Obviously, Section 301, that's one of the reasons why it was put in place, because of the copyright and intellectual property right infringements from the Chinese. So that's always has been part of trade agreements. Yeah.
So can the Rio Grande Valley, can South Texas, Northern Tamaulipas, our Realplex area, can we benefit? How can we benefit from what happens with USMCA? Changes are made.
I think it's going to be beneficial because what's going to happen, and I've been discussing this with other consultants and other members of the community. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see more of the manufacturing assembly operations come to the U.S. and in this particular case, South Texas, because of the proximity to Mexico. So we're going back to the twin plant model that we had in the 70s and 80s before NAFTA, because that's going to allow companies to be flexible, to meet rules of origin, to comply with the U.S. Factories and all that. So I think we're going to see a shift of more investment in actual manufacturing assembly plants in our region, especially automotive, electronics, technology.
So our region would have a good shot at getting some of that business.
Most definitely, yes, and that's why we have entities like Rioplex and the economic developments. We understand that that's a big opportunity that we have, and we want to capitalize that. But there are a lot of efforts that we have to put, and we have some weaknesses that we need to work on, like infrastructure, power, water, things of that nature. So,
workforce development.
I think we have the workforce. I think we have the people, but we need to train them better. Obviously, we have South Texas College, Texas A&M, UTRGV. They're doing an excellent job, particularly South Texas College with the trade programs that technicians and machine operators and things of that nature. So I think that part is already evolving, and I'm very positive and optimistic from that angle. We do have the challenges on providing electricity, water, infrastructure, things of that nature. So, but we'll get there working as a team.
You'll be pleased to hear that just this morning, in fact, Noble Texas Builders provided a $100,000 check to South Texas.
I saw that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And it'll be matched by the STC Foundation.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that will be for the students that are studying for the construction industry, engineering, architecture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And actually, that's going to be needed, because if we're going to have more manufacturing facilities in South Texas, there's going to be more construction, more design needed. And so that's excellent. Yeah.
So what's the mood in Mexico? What do you read and hear there? How are they thinking about the revision, the renegotiation of USMCA?
Well, they're cautiously optimistic. Like I mentioned earlier, they have their challenges because there's a lot of things in the table, and there's a lot of pressure for Mexico to comply with those non-tariff barriers and to comply with the demands that the U.S. has. So I don't want to say that the U.S. has the hand on USMCA, but pretty much they do. And if they're not satisfied with what Mexico is doing or they're going to be doing, it might be dissolved and they might have to negotiate bilateral agreements. So I think the current administration is taking the right approach in a lot of ways for the renegotiation. However, we do see other challenges in Mexico that from a fiscal and legal standpoint, that is creating some uncertainty, which is affecting the nearshoring of companies moving to Mexico, which I still think is going to continue to happen. Foreign direct investment is going to continue, but not at the pace that a lot of people thought. And I hope that the Mexican government realizes that they're losing a golden opportunity and capitalize on the nearshoring and being able to have USMCA continue. So they need to ensure that they work on that, because as you know, without getting political, we have a socialist regime in Mexico now with Morena and the 4T, and they're more focused on social aspects of the people in Mexico rather than investing in infrastructure and giving incentives to foreign investment, to foreign companies. So they need to kind of backtrack and go back to the prior administrations, how they were dealing with those foreign direct investments and promoting Mexico as a hub for manufacturing.
So if there were more protection, if there was more protection and more certainty, Mexico could actually get even more investment.
Exactly, most definitely, yes. If USMCA continues and they focus more on the regional value content requirements, and big companies like GM forcing suppliers to not provide them with the Asian Chinese components, but that by default is going to create the need for companies to set up in Mexico. But that will be accelerated if Mexico provided more legal and fiscal certainty and incentives.
And to bring it all home to you and your company, how do you, will it mean a lot of relearning and having to understand new aspects of the law? Require you to bring more consultants in, or for you to be studying all night?
Well,
business?
Yes. If USMCA is dissolved and they go to bilateral agreements, like I mentioned, there's going to be new sets of rules. So we're going to have to go back and learn that and help our customers. So that's going to create additional work for us from a consulting standpoint. Even if USMCA continues, there's going to be changes. Some that can be radical. So we're going to have to go back and relearn and review some of the changes so that we can pass that along to our customers. So either or, next year is going to be interesting for us, and I think we're going to be more active in the consulting side. So.
And what are you hearing from your clients? Like overall, are there specific concerns they have?
Yeah, there's uncertainty. Obviously, with the current situation in the United States with the tariffs, is creating a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of new investments and expansions are put on hold because of that uncertainty. Hopefully, next year the dust will settle. USMCA, will know what's going to happen from a tariff perspective. I know it's been calm in the last few weeks compared to prior months. Knock on wood. I hope I don't jinx it. But so I think companies are finally understanding what it takes. They're focusing a lot on trade compliance. They're incorporating trade compliance and understanding how the tariffs impact their operations, and they're implementing that as as part of their strategic planning. So finally, they're taking trade very seriously. So they're able to maneuver and manage it better. And if we get more trade deals like they're happening now with South Korea and some other countries, that finally some of the things that President Trump wanted to happen are starting to happen. So that's why we've probably seen things kind of quiet, because now he's focusing more on setting up those trade agreements with different countries. So if that continues to happen, we're probably going to see a reduction in tariffs. They're not going to go away. I think they're going to stay even after Trump leaves. Once you put a tariff, and it's a revenue stream for the government, so they're not going to go away. They're probably going to decrease, but we're going to have tariffs for some time. So as long as companies can have the certainty, I think it's going to be better.
And what about that court case you were telling us about last time, where the court's considering whether President Trump even has the authority to impose all the tariffs that he has? Any news there?
Yes. Well, this is only concerning IEEPA. Okay, that and the case is basically, did the president have legal authority to impose tariffs under IEEPA? It's not about Section 232 and Section 301, because a lot of people say, okay, tariffs are going to go away. Well, no, it's only on IEEPA. So the hearings happened a few weeks ago. A decision will happen by the middle of next year, hopefully sooner. And there's speculation that it's probably going to happen before the end of this year. I know President Trump is pushing for the decision to be made by the Supreme Court. People ask me, well, what do you think? It's like, well, I wish I had a crystal ball, but it looks like there's a high possibility that they're going to say, no, the president didn't have legal authority to impose tariffs under IEEPA. So if that happens, then what's going to happen with all the tariffs that were collected? Are they going to be refunded, either 100% or partial? Are they going to be refunded only to the entities that sued the government, which last week Costco, by the way, sued the government for tariffs? So those are still unknown. Obviously, the refund process, even the court, one of the judges said, "Oh man, this is a big concern. If we strike down IEEPA and we're going to implement, and the government's going to implement a refund process, it's going to be a nightmare." So the mechanism to provide those refunds is still unknown. I mean, Customs has processes to do that via protests, post-summary corrections. Or are they going to do an automatic refund, or we're going to have to file for those refunds, and we, the brokers, will have to be involved in that process. Those are still unknown. And even if they're struck down, IEEPA is struck down, the government is going to go back and say, okay, fine, they didn't allow it under IEEPA, but we have the Section 232s, the Sections 301, the Sections 201, so they can go back and implement tariffs under those sections that were waived by IEEPA. So it's not over. So I'm sure if they're struck down, they're going to go back and assign tariffs in other sections. But right now, any new tariff that they're imposing is going through Section 232. For example, wood products, upholstered furniture, heavy truck parts, all those are being implemented via Section 232, not IEEPA. I think the president kind of knows that he went a little bit too far, but he's hoping that it's not going to be struck down. We'll see what happens.
So, in your 30 years, more or less 30 years of working in this profession, in this business, this industry, have you ever known such uncertain times?
We have had uncertain times and challenges before. Obviously, I can go back in history with when, at least from my 30 years, when ACE, with the new ACE system was implemented by customs, that was a learning curve. When NAFTA was implemented, that was a learning curve. Section 301, that was a learning curve back in 2018. But as complex and dynamic as 2025 has been, no. Has been very challenging.
So you're going to be pleased to see the end of this year?
I think so, but next year is going to bring other challenges like the IEPA. What's going to happen with the refunds? Are they going to go back and assign tariffs through other sections? The USMCA revision. So we still have some challenges,
What we're certain of then is you're going to stay busy.
That's for sure. I mean, we have some job security, if you want to call it that way. But our services are going to be needed, and we're going to be here to help our customers and the trade community as much as we can. So.
And you're going to be in great demand for webinars.
Yeah.
As one of our experts, leading experts from our region, I know you're on these national webinars on this topic.
Yeah, we're going to do a few more. Obviously, I think this year it's going to stay kind of quiet. I might come out on the radio one more time with Sergio Sanchez before the end of the year. Hopefully, if the IEPA case is decided, we're going to help go back. But next year is going to be busy with USMCA and other things. So, yeah, I'll be active in webinars and interviews and podcasts.
So my last question, do we know when the next round of hearings are going to be for the USMCA?
I don't know that from the top of my head. They need to issue an announcement, but it probably will be sometime the first quarter of next year. So.
Those are all the questions I had, Jorge. You've really enlightened me, as you always do. Anything else you want to talk about and missed out?
Other than, making companies ensuring that they stay close with their custom brokers, consultants, and get the information from reliable sources, not from social media, get it from the government, and obviously work with the reputable consultants and keep trade compliance as a top priority for your companies, because now with the economic impact, financial impact that we have with tariffs, like I mentioned, trade compliance and managing the tariffs, it's a crucial part of the strategic plan for any company now that imports into the United States. So continue doing that, continue working closely with your brokers, consultants, and we should be fine.